Welcome to my channel. This is Bruce the Boss, and today's topic is diversity issues in the NFL. But before we get into that, please don't forget to like this video, comment on this video, and don't forget to subscribe to your channel. Your subscriptions and overall interactions on this channel go a long way with allowing it to beat the YouTube algorithm and the suppression that we're seeing, and allows my content to be put out there more and allows me to produce and put out more content. Your subscriptions go a long way. Thank you so much. So the Hill Roger Goodell, NFL's commissioner, calls the NFL's lack of diversity unacceptable. All right, so he goes on to say in that quote, racism and any form of discrimination is contrary to the NFL's values, end quote, Goodell said in a memo to all clubs provided to the Hill, noting that the league's efforts to promote diversity with respect to head coaches have not gone far enough. And I quote, "We made significant efforts to promote diversity and adopted numerous policies and programs which have produced positive change in many areas. However, we must acknowledge that, particularly with respect to head coaches, the results have been unacceptable," end quote, Goodell said. Now, this is in light of Brian Flores, former head coach of the Miami Dolphins, lawsuit, which was last week, which accused the league of racism, while also alleging that the Dolphins owner Stephen Ross offered to pay him $100,000 per loss in the 2019 season so that the team could have stronger chances of securing the top draft pick for that year. Additionally, his lawsuit included a text message from New England Patriots head coach Bill Belichick, in which Coach Belichick congratulated Flores for securing the head coaching job with the New York Giants, a position he had not yet interviewed for. Belichick later said he meant to send the text to Buffalo Bills assistant coach Brian Daboli. Oops. So diversity in the NFL of all places seems to be a very interesting thing, considering that it is majority minority involved. I believe over 70% of the players involved are people of color, whether you're talking about Hispanic, Black, and or Latino, especially when you look at various positions, whether it be the running back position, the wide receiver position, the safety position, the corner position, and more often than not, most defensive linemen, majority of people of color. And then the same thing with the tight end position. I think that has the most diversity, where there is a mixture of Caucasian, Hispanic, and or Black, but you have to be tall, athletic for that position. But majority Black for the most speed-related positions. No calls for diversity there to get more white running backs or white wide receivers or white cornerbacks or white safeties. The only position where there is a majority Caucasian, I believe, in the NFL is either the offensive line and or the quarterback position. I think in large part due to when you look at a lot of minority quarterback players, for instance, on average, they seem to bring a level of athleticism and outside pocket play that most traditional Caucasian quarterbacks did not bring outside of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. In fact, I think they took what Brett Favre did and took it to another level. You saw that with Dante Culpepper, Michael Vick in the beginning, and then you saw it with the next generation of quarterbacks, whether it was Colin Kaepernick, Vince Young, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, and now Lamar Jackson. Now, the problem with certain players who follow more so the Michael Vick category and or formulation, you can only sustain that level of athleticism and running outside of the pocket for so long before defenses catch on, and you may be hot for a season maybe before the defenses pick apart that offense the next season, and that level of success is not sustainable long term, and especially in the postseason. Now, McNabb picked up on that, and with the help of Coach Andy Reid, was able to refine this game to not only be a threat on the ground, but also in passing, setting many passing records. And we saw that McNabb had so much more sustainable success long-term, and especially in the postseason. But I digress. It has to do with winning. Teams, owners, they want to win. Now, I think it's not so much on the players. Now we're talking about the head coaching position. Now, coaching in general, I think there is a great deal of diversity when you're talking about whether it be special teams, defensive coach, offensive coach. It's just a head coaching position where there is presently it's not as diverse presently. Now, historically, I believe, or at least just within the last 22 years, you've had about 24, 25 different black head coaches. People like Mike Singletary, Romeo Crennel, Jim Caldwell, Herman Edwards, big boys, not legendary, but he was a pretty successful coach for the Jets and the Kansas City Chiefs in the early 2000s. But as far as legendary, you have Tony Dungy and currently Mike Tomlin, because they're two of the most successful head coaches, just period, due to their success in the postseason and Super Bowl wins to back that up. Presently, Mike Tomlin is currently the only black head coach. Now, Mike Flores' situation is an interesting one, but I don't believe it has anything to do with race. Now, his situation was he came into the head coaching position for the Miami Dolphins, and despite a lot of false testimony, he did not turn the team around. There are a lot of people who are saying that the team was winless before him, when truth be told, he inherited the team from former head coach Adam Gase. Adam Gase was the head coach for the Miami Dolphins for about 3 seasons himself only, from 2016 through 2018. And in Adam's first season, he turned the team around with a 10-6 record. They made it to the playoffs that year. They did lose in the first round. And then after that, it was downhill. But at least he had a playoff season in his very first breakout season. In his final season, Adam Gase, that is the former head coach prior to Brian Flores, ended the season with a 7-9 record, I believe. And then when Brian Flores took over, if anything, he had an even worse record starting out of the gate. He actually only had 5 wins. I believe it was like a 5-11 season. He did turn things around in the 2020 season with about a 10-6 record, but still it wasn't good enough to make the playoffs, no playoff appearance. And then in his final season, he started off the season 1-7, an abysmal starting record. He did finish off the second half pretty impressively. After that, he only had 1 more loss, and he went on pretty much an 8-1 tear to end off the season with a 9-8 record. Now, again, technically that's also a winning record. It's just pretty much 1 game above 500, pretty much. But there was still not a single playoff record in the whole bunch. And when you look at his overall 3-year tenure, it is a losing coaching record. Now, by all accounts, that's not the sole reason why he got fired, actually. It had more to do with issues with management. For instance, there is on record that the owner of the Miami Dolphins is an avid Donald Trump supporter. Brian Flores is definitely not. You can classify pretty much a lot of people who don't like Trump as having TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and we already know what they think of a lot of people who support Trump. So there were a lot of issues with management, which soured his relationship there, and that could have also played a part in his job interviews going forward, because these owners is only but so many, and they do talk. Now, there is a serious issue of tanking. We do know that teams generally, it's no secret that teams tank, but the idea is that you don't intentionally try to lose, but rather what many organizations might try to do is put together the worst team possible and/or roster, so that no matter how good or much of an effort those players put cohesively, they're not put in a situation to necessarily win. But the idea is that you don't intentionally tank, and/or the organization isn't looking to tank, but they would like to, quote unquote, tank in order to get a better playoff position. And what I believe Miami Dolphins were looking for was they were looking to get the quarterback Joe Burrows in the 2019-2020 draft. Now they wound up ending up getting the 5th pick in the draft that year. They did pick a quarterback, but not Joe Burrows that they wanted. But the idea that Brian Flores was paid $100,000 to lose a game may account for why he had a worse record than his previous predecessor. And that's another issue that needs to be proved. If he can prove it, that puts the Miami Dolphins in a very precarious situation. But as far as race being a factor in anything, now the situation that happened with Brian Flores, if you haven't heard, is after he was let go for the Miami Dolphins after 3 seasons. Again, I'm putting an asterisk on the 2 back-to-back winning seasons, because they neither of which led to a playoff appearance. And when listening to people like, winners, in another sport like Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant, if they didn't win the championship, it wasn't a successful season. And even more so, if they didn't make the playoffs, it was always considered a failing season. If you are going home while other of your peers are still out there playing and competing for a championship, that's a failure in many eyes. And so despite winning his last 2 seasons, not making it to the playoffs at all isn't a good look necessarily, but it still warranted him at least he could still qualify for a head coaching position someplace else at some point in time. It just means that teams aren't going to fall all over you. Now, what he did is he did interview for the Denver Broncos and the New York Giants. Problem is, before he had his interview with the New York Giants, his former head coach and current head coach, legendary head coach of the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick, as you read in the article, did text him. That is an issue, but not one of race and or major concern. Reason being, and this is what I feel based upon my experience, when you're dealing with an organization outside of entry-level position, you're moving up, trying to move up the ladder. When there are certain opportunities that become available, normally if there is 2 scenarios I'll give. One scenario is if there is a rising star within an organization, the management will usually try to create a position for that individual to have an opportunity to stand up, and they're opening that position with that person in mind. Now, to be fair, they still have to post the position and make it available for anyone to interview, but they pretty much already have in their mind who amongst their current organization they want to give that opportunity to. Nothing wrong with that, happens all the time. Now, scenario number 2, and this is what I think happened in the Brian Flores case, is, and this happens in a lot of organizations, is they will interview with a blank slate with nobody in mind for the position, and then someone comes in during the interview process early on that just blows them away. Whether it be just because of their record, their ability, how they presented themselves, and or I think the most important part of the interview process is just your ability to connect with the interviewer. Don't just go through an interview. If you can make a connection with the person interviewing you, the hiring manager, if they can see themselves liking you and wanting to work with you just on a personal level, have that conversation and or rapport, you got them. And that could have been what happened here with the case of the other Brian Daboli getting the position. He blew them away. They liked his vision. Now, he has a blank slate, never was a head coach prior to this, but he does have the coaching experience with several other teams and under the tutelage of other great coaches like Belichick. So he's a blank slate, and he can be the blank slate and new start that they are looking for, and just giving him that opportunity. And they were blown away. They liked him. Problem is, they already knew they had him in mind, but they haven't met with everyone yet. But they already knew, like, all right, this is our guy. But they haven't met with Brian Flores yet, for instance. So they knew they had to get that interview out of the way, at the very least, just to meet the quota being the Rooney Rule, where NFL teams and organizations have to, as a rule, at least meet with one person of color for a head coaching position to at least consider and or, again, interview. And so they did that. Again, no malice against him. He wasn't denied because of his ethnicity. By all accounts, it just looks like the other Brian won them over before they even met with Brian. I can't say what happened with the Denver Broncos situation. They just went another way, likely. But we do know for a fact with the New York Giants, they had already made up their mind before meeting with Flores. Again, it has nothing to do with race. You cannot force a team to pick someone based upon their skin color, despite what the President of the United States is trying to do with the Supreme Court by not basing it off of merits and or ability, but rather just based upon the person's gender and ethnicity, despite his history of denying 2 black female Supreme Court nominations back in 2003 and 2005 twice, but I digress. There seems to be a push to push people up based upon their check marks. Their ethnicity and or gender has nothing to do with qualifications and skill. Teams want to win. They don't care about your color, your ethnicity. They just want someone who's going to put them in the best position to win and or win long term, regardless of who you are. Hence why Mike Tomlin has had his position for so long. He has the history of winning. He has the playoff wins. He has the Super Bowl, and he has the trust and confidence of his players. They don't care. All they care about is winning. If you can put them in the best position to win, and you're not going to be a disruption or disruptive factor to the organization, you can work well with the management, you'll have a job. I firmly believe Brian Flores would have had a job. He just might have needed to wait one season maybe, but he would have gotten a position because it wasn't an abysmal record. It wasn't anything to write home about. But if you're dealing with an organization like the New York Giants, for instance, who haven't had a successful season really since their 2012 Super Bowl winning season, meanwhile watching their very own division rivals, both the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys, make the playoffs and win the division year after year after year, trading only between those two teams really over that time span. I don't believe the Washington Redskins or Washington Commanders now had a real winning season since during that time span, really. Maybe 2015, I have to double check. But, the Giants have not really been competitive during that time span. They want to change. They want to get over that hump. I believe Flores would have had a better chance with a team that is just looking to stay consistent and see what they can do. Maybe the Cleveland Browns, maybe the Tennessee Titans, maybe the Los Angeles Chargers at some point, but not a team who has already tasted gold, tasted championship in recent history and are desperately trying to get it again right now. So let me know what you think in the comment section, but I just hate when people try to make everything about race. I don't think this is one of those factors or one of those issues, but I'd like to know what you think. Leave a description in the comment section below. This is Bruce the Boss, and I'm out. Peace.